Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for another video and another discussion with a great Chelsea guest, a first time guest on the channel, Nischal Schwager-Patel. I'm so happy to have Nischal on the channel because he's a regular part of the Chelsea press box now, a journalist, I think the first official journalist I've got on the channel. So it's interesting speaking to Nischal because of course he's been very lucky to be inside Stamford Bridge recently. So I speak to him about the current situation at Chelsea with Tuchel, with the players, but also what it's like experiencing football firsthand without a full capacity stadium. So we speak about that whole situation, what Tuchel's been like. Nishal's been able to ask Tuchel some questions himself, so we get into that, what Tuchel's first few months at Chelsea have been like, reflecting on that, the highs, also what Tuchel can achieve in the long term at Chelsea, potentially a Premier League title next season, plus some other good stuff as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. If you do, give the video a like. Also support Nishal's work. All the links for his work will be in the description box below, so go and check him out, and also make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you don't miss any of the content on the channel. But let's get to the discussion now. So Nischal, thank you so much for joining me today to speak about Chelsea. It's a crazy time at the moment. It's pretty intense. I know for you, you are at the games now in the press box, which is an incredible thing, and sort of seeing your work, your videos from Stamford Bridge. What's it been like for you recently, you know, covering Chelsea, but also, of course, just watching Chelsea and the intensity of this season?
Above all, it's been a privilege to be in the press box, to be watching Chelsea when fans aren't allowed and we're behind closed doors. But honestly, it's quite sad, going to games and you're walking down Fulham Road completely by yourself. There are no fans outside the stadium, no one selling programs, no one there letting you, scan your ticket. So it does feel really weird and sad knowing that we don't have 40,000 fans there. But on the other hand, it's a real privilege not only to be there myself, but to be able to represent the fan base. Because what I want to do with my content is give an insight for the fans at home and show them what they'd usually be seeing on a match day and what they may be missing. And it's not just for, maybe the UK fans who aren't going to games, the fans in India, the US, Zambia, all around the world. So I really recognise the importance of getting people to feel involved with the game and connected to the team because, during the pandemic, it's such a difficult time to be connected to football above all things. So to be able to be in that position to help connect the fans in the club really does mean a lot to me, and it's a great privilege.
It's a great thing to have at the moment because I do agree it's a weird moment, and the last year has been quite weird because fans, not only of Chelsea but of most clubs, I think, have felt at times distance from their clubs, and that's just very natural. But I think for some others, more for some than others, I think in terms of how connected they feel, especially ones that I've spoken to personally, and the effect I've sort of felt over the past year watching it on TV, it can feel a little bit mundane at times, not having those fans there. I just wonder, watching the game, sort of the intensity of it, because there are so many nuances to player performances, obviously being able to hear the players, unlike when there's a full capacity stadium, which I actually think for a viewing experience is actually quite interesting. How have you found that as well? Because of course there is a negativity of not having that organic noise from fans, but also maybe you get a little bit more insight from the coaches and players that you wouldn't get in sort of a normal time in football.
I think it's a real challenge for players because they've got to motivate themselves even more without the fans. Naturally, they need to be able to motivate themselves and drive themselves to even be in this position. But a big part of football has been urged on by the fans, especially at Stamford Bridge. We've got 40,000 fans, but when it's empty, you really have to rely on each other to motivate each other and really get involved in the game. And, whether you hear it with or without fans, the players are a lot more vocal. Kepa is one who really stands out for me, someone who's, infamously not been as confident or as vocal in the past. He's been very loud, not only from his goal when I've seen him play, but also from the bench. He's always talking, always communicating. And there's a real team spirit from the bench, especially. You've got maybe 10 substitutes on the bench not playing. They're not disappointed. They're there really urging the team on, all shouting, all clapping, really involved in the game. And that's what you want to see because they are playing the role of a fans almost, where they've got to motivate their teammates and they've really got to be that support on the touchline. Tuchel as well, really fascinating to listen to from the touchline. Something I remember with Lampard was that occasionally we'd see him very silent on the touchline, which really hurt me in seeing him crossed on. But Tuchel is very involved, very active and very, very passionate. He's a loud man on the touchline when he wants to be, whether he's shouting it in English, in French, in German. You will always hear him when he has a point to make. And either that or he's talking to his assistant manager, Toddler, kind of saying, he's not happy with something or what he wants to change. And you're always hearing him and talking to the players, which is a great insight. The game against Sheffield United was the first one where I really saw him kind of just observing the game for the majority of it, not really getting engaged. But overall, it's a really big challenge for the players and the manager to have to motivate each other, but they're doing a brilliant job, of course. 14 games unbeaten, so big credit to them.
We saw that team spirit specifically against Atletico Madrid. We saw Thiago Silva in the stand, really encouraging the players, Jorginho, Mason Mount. I think that's a great thing, especially in the current times. Of course, you've been able to be in those press conferences as well and cover them for Thomas Tuchel. How have you found his demeanour and the way he's dealt with the PR side? Because I think we can be very cynical with coaches and say, are they being told to say things? Are they being trained to say things? But personally, from minute one, I've been really impressed with the way Tuchel has handled himself in these press conferences. In particular, the way he's elaborated on tactical points, which, personally, and I'm sure for you as well, covering the games, it's really helpful when you're trying to dissect his sort of tactics and decision making. What have you found on that front? Because you've been able to actually ask him questions, which is exciting.
Yeah, the press conferences have become much more important in the pandemic. Like I said, when we're looking at the connection between the fans and the manager, and you can't see them up close, watching them through their press conferences before every game becomes so much more important. And for me, from the ones I've been lucky enough to attend, he's such a fascinating and engaging man to listen to. Most managers, and you can say this honestly, you'll get a standard answer. Yeah, it's a big game, we're preparing, team news, so on and so forth. But he's such an interesting man to listen to, whether he's being asked about the latest tactics, about players, about youth players, about who he wants to pursue. He understands the game so well. And you listen to him, like you say, talking about tactics, about philosophy, about other managers, and you can tell he really knows his stuff about football. And being able to listen to him, you can really tell that's the sort of man and the sort of philosophy he endures. Because, compare him to other managers, sometimes you may see them, like I said, giving the standard answers. Other times we've seen them bite back over press, whether that's justified or not is a whole nother debate. But with Tuchel, he's very happy to talk to the media, and he's, jokes around, and of course speaking another language as well. Even though I do speak German, I couldn't do full press conferences in German. So hearing him speak in English so fluently and so confidently is really great too. And I think all the journalists who are in these press conferences will say the same thing. He's a very passionate man. He's very fascinating to listen to, and he knows his stuff. But above all, he's got that winning mentality. We had a question the other day where a journalist asked him, is there an emphasis on maintaining your unbeaten run? And what he said was, I'm not focused on maintaining that unbeaten run, but looking at the next game. I would be really disappointed if we were more worried about losing our record than winning the next game. And that's the winning mentality you want. Because for a manager to be saying that after being unbeaten for 13 games and saying, I don't care about that, we've got another game to win, that's a winning mentality. Not only you need at any football club, but at Chelsea especially, where we demand success, we demand trophies, and Tuchel clearly is the perfect man for that job.
I've been I like him for his humility, but also clarity, I think, so far. In particular, I think it was an interview he did with Rio Ferdinand before the Atletico first leg, where he not only spoke about formation, sort of his philosophy, all the things you're sort of impressed by with Tuchel so far. I think for me personally, it was the clarity on the length of his contract, sort of the expectations, the chaotic nature of this club. This is only individually. I think the way he's been so honest on that front and made it particularly clear what's expected of him, when maybe in the past couple of years there's been sort of a smoke and mirrors approach where, are we going in a new direction, or is it just the same thing, in terms of the approach from above. I think it's become very clear. Also, you couple that with what Roman said recently in an interview. What have you made of that? Because I think that's a very important thing to be made quite clear, and it seems Tuchel has been very honest on that front where maybe other coaches previously haven't.
Yeah, his honesty is another thing I can really praise him for, because whenever he's speaking, you can tell he's not just saying what he's been told to by the press officer, or he's not just saying what he thinks will get him good headlines. He's just speaking normally. He's having a conversation with the journalists and with the press, and that really comes across in how much depth he speaks in, how he speaks in such a light-hearted way as well, just joking around with the press is really nice to see that other side. But, having an honest and transparent manager is really important for the press, for the fans, for the club, because we know exactly what's expected of him. And he knows that, like you said, he's spoken about his contract. He knows that, the details of his contract, I think it's an 18-month with a year extension. He knows that he's got to perform. He knows what's expected out of his club. He's not in a situation where he thinks, even if I go in a bad run of form, I'll be fine, because he understands the philosophy of Chelsea. And not just that, as a manager, look at him at PSG. He was, still in the title race in the Champions League knockout stages, and he still got sacked. so he understands how cynical football can be. So having having an honest and transparent manager is a real joy to watch as well. When we've got so many managers giving press conferences and interviews, and many of them are just doing it as a formality where they need to. But Tuchel really enjoys that conversation aspect of it, and we see him, talking in such depth and praise about N'Golo Conte, for example. He loves that man, about Olivier Giroud, about Timo Werner, and you can really tell that he cares about this club and he understands what he needs to do and what he wants to achieve in terms of success and silverware.
Do you think we've got Tuchel at the perfect time? Because I remember reading a book where he was interviewed, I think it was called The Edge by Ben Littleton, and it sort of went into several leading figures in football. And the quotes in particular came out that he was sort of in opposition to a club with a philosophy of Chelsea, and you felt that was brought up the moment he signed for Chelsea. But he has been at one club since then, and that was PSG, which you can say there are striking similarities between Chelsea and PSG in terms of the expectation from very ambitious owners. Do you think we finally got a coach now who maybe that friction there politically and culturally at PSG maybe have been ironed out a bit, so at Chelsea we're going to get a smoother ride maybe than before?
The political tension between the manager and the board is still a risk, let's be honest. He had that Borussia Dortmund, he had that PSG, and it was one of the biggest criticisms we had. What if he falls out, not just of any board, but with Roman Abramovich, Marino Granovskaya? That's not your average football board. That's one of the most cynical, most ruthless boards. Why else would they sack a club legend after a year and a half? That just shows you how they feel and what their way of business is. So we do have that risk, but I try not to worry about it too much, because on the pitch, results-wise, we're doing fine. We don't need to worry about what's going on at a high level. But like I said, with a transparent manager like that towards the press, towards the board, I don't think we need to worry too much about that. He seems like a man who's smart enough to have learned from his mistakes, understand what he did wrong, and also understand the magnitude of working with a board like Chelsea. It's not the average board where you get a decent back-in, but you may be a risk. There's a lot of money, a lot at stake, and a lot expected and demanded from that board. And he will understand that. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that dynamic unfolds over the course of the next 2, 3, however long years he's there. But also, if there's ever a dip in form, which likely there will be, how will the board react? Will there be a breakdown in communication? Will there be a similar thing we saw with Frank Lampard, where he was sacked after one bad run of form? Or are we going to see them have real faith in this manager? Because I've been really critical of a board not having faith in managers, especially Lampard. The fact we've done so well, we went through about a month or two of bad form, that was it. I don't want to see the same happen with Tuchel. And it's going to be fascinating to see when the time comes, whether it's a bad form, bad relationships, players falling out, anything of that magnitude, what will happen? Will Tuchel be able to maintain that relationship with the board, or is it going to go downhill once again?
I think just enjoying the moment. He's only been here, I think, just under 2 months. So I think it's just about enjoying what's happening.
2 months on Friday.
Yeah, it's astonishing what he's kind of achieved. I mean, of course, not in terms of silverware, but what he's achieved with the squad so far, some of the big results he's had. Moving more onto the pitch, I mean, one of the things that has been a consistent theme and sort of something that has improved over his time so far is the counter press. If you to do a comparison between the first game against Wolves, where he had 24 hours preparation, to our most recent game, of course, seeing that firsthand, how have you seen that develop? Because that, to me, just watching on TV has been something that's become more coherent, I think more obvious, and something that is helping the team win back possession. So I wonder, seeing it up close, it's probably even more intense to witness.
You could really feel the intensity up close. Burnley was my first game which I witnessed, and right from the start, you could see that the players were so motivated, actually wanting to play from the badge, which, however much it pains me to say it, we didn't see that at the end of a Lampard tenure. The players were motivated, they didn't care. But seeing that, within a week of Lampard being sacked and Tuchel being brought in, I saw that straight away, really intense football, the game being quicker than I've seen for a long, long time, and everyone communicating, everyone really moving as a component, as a team together. It's not just one player like Timo Werner pressing, it's the entire team. And if they're not doing that, Callum Hudson-Odoi against Southampton, for example, they're going to get taken off. There are no exceptions at all. Seeing it up close, you can really feel the energy and see the intensity that Tuchel is instilling on the team through his communication. He's so loud and so energetic on the touchline, but also from the team. Like I said, you've got Kepa communicating, you've got Aspi, of course, leading as captain. You've got players like Hudson-Odoi, Mount, Kovacic, all talking and all really driving each other on. And you can really feel that firsthand when you're there. And clearly it's worked. This is our best ever unbeaten run for a new manager in the club's history. And that's really down to the counter-press and the energy, because we see teams come to Stamford Bridge, play Chelsea, and they are forced to play at such a high intensity because we put them into that. And the only teams, in my opinion, who can really fight against that and complete are Manchester City and maybe Liverpool in form. We didn't see that at Anfield, but when they're at their best, we would see that. So the FA Cup semi-final is going to be really interesting. But it's really good to see this really energetic and attacking mind and style of football, because it's something we were missing for a while. We saw it under Mauricio Sarri, but of course that broke down with toxicity. We saw it with Antonio Conte to an extent. Of course, that went south very quickly. But we've seen that again with Thomas Tuchel, the attacking style of football that we want to see at this club. So it's looking brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this will unfold in the future.
It can be a pretty glorious end to the season, can't it? I think if we were to sit here and have this conversation in late January, compared to now, and think, we could be in the quarterfinals of the Champions League and have faced Porto. We're in the FA Cup semi-final. We've pretty much got top four in our own hands at this point. I think even though despite some other teams having games in hand, you think if Chelsea don't get top four from this position, it will be quite disappointing. Who have been sort of the key performers that have really impressed you, maybe surprised you under Tuchel so far? Because there have been many players who've impressed every now and then, but I think there's been some consistent performers I've looked at. But in your opinion, who's really impressed you?
My surprise has been Marcos Alonso, not for his performances, but seeing him actually play for Chelsea again, because I didn't think I'd ever see him play for the club. But he's done really well when he's called upon, when he's given the chance as a wing-back. He has done really well, and he has impressed me, so credit to him. In terms of who's really impressed me and stood out for me, it's always that midfield pivot, whether it's Jorginho and Kovacic, Conte and Kovacic, even Gilmour and Kovacic we saw the other day. That midfield pivot is crucial to Chelsea's team. If we don't have a good midfield and they're not performing, the team will not do well. And we've seen that on occasions when Jorginho is missing or Kovacic is rested, and we're missing that extra attacking drive and that stability in the midfield. And the midfield has really, really impressed me. Jorginho and Kovacic, I've said before, they're not the most glamorous midfield. They're not one that you compare to Xavi and Iniesta, for example. But they do the job, and they are so efficient in cleaning up, covering the defence, driving forward. Kovacic is just a joy to watch. And especially when we saw him, play of the season last season, and then really struggle under Lampard this season. Didn't make sense, but we've seen that resurgence now. Billy Gilmour as well, he's not had many chances, but in the 2 games he's played under Tuchel, Barnsley and Sheffield United, he's been fantastic. He looks so comfortable, he's so at ease, and you can see he's going to be in that position in the future. Then N'Golo Kante, what can you say about him? He has been magnificent, and I will hold my hands up and say, I was worried about what his future was at the club. He had lots of injury problems, we weren't seeing as much of him, he could play 1 game and then be injured for 4 weeks, so I wasn't sure, can we still rely on him long term? But as we've seen under Tuchel, he is back to his very best. And I think the game that summed it up was Atletico Madrid. And the period of the game that summed it up was the last goal, where he went box to box in about 8 seconds, the 94th minute. How anyone can do that, not just to mention at his age, after all those injuries, after that intensity of a game in a Champions League round of 16 tie, to be able to do that and then, stop in the box so effortlessly and not look out of breath. I think that just epitomizes what a player N'Golo Kante is. So all of those midfielders have really impressed me. And, without those midfield options of Gilmour, Kovacic, Jorginho and Conte, we're not doing as well under Tuchel.
Do you think that midfield option, I think, has been up for debate for a couple of years now of what it is, and it seems to have really clicked, but there have been debates, and I think it's a fair point. I think I've made this point as well in terms of maybe being a little bit more offensive in games. There has been a sense at times of caution to help out the defence to keep that rigidness. Do you think we need to go into the market in the summer and invest in this area? Because I look at the positioning of Jorginho, who's done wonderfully, I think, and has been really strong under Tuchel, but he is playing a lot more reserved than he was under Frank Lampard and especially Mauricio Sarri. He's very much staying in his own position, and I think maybe that's down to the limitations within his game. We know the strengths of his game, and Tuchel, as a good coach, is exploiting them to help Chelsea's team. But that area for me is still one that I feel Chelsea have been lacking in for a while, and I'd be a little bit disappointed if we don't go and invest in that area. What do you think?
It's a very interesting debate because we know in the summer we're going to have to make some Tuchel signings. We have a really strong squad and a great group of players, but Tuchel needs to bring in at least some players that he wants. I'm not sure about bringing a defensive midfielder, and I think we do have the money for it. We've got resources, obviously, and we also have the options for it. Eduardo Camavinga's one who stands out for me. Declan Rice, of course, we had in previous times. Someone I'd really love to see is Dennis Zakaria, of course, he's Swiss, so that's the connection for me. But he's a fantastic defensive midfielder who I'm waiting to see in the Premier League because he will be here eventually, I'm sure of that. But on the other hand, we do have really strong defensive midfield options, not only in that place, but when you compare it to other parts of the squad, you have to ask, what is our priority? Understandably, we're looking at a number 9. We've been lacking that cutting edge for a good few years now. And if Erling Haaland is on the table, we have to go for him. Do we look at another right winger, Hakim Ziyech? Yes, he's outstanding and a great player, but he's very injury prone. And when we've been missing him, we've got 3 wingers, 2 of them are injury prone. So do we need to invest in another winger? So it's about what do we prioritize in terms of positions. Last summer, I remember saying with Kai Havertz, for example, yes, I would love him, but we need to prioritize other positions like a left back and even a goalkeeper. We ended up doing both, which shows that the club are capable of doing that. And in terms of now, I do see the priority of being in other positions, especially in the final third. But I wouldn't object to looking for a defensive midfielder, because if we can bring in a new partner for N'Golo Kante for now, and then a long-term partner for Billy Gilmour once he really gets to that position and he's ready to be our starting defensive midfielder, that would be perfect. So there are the options. We've got resources, but it's up to Tuchel whether he believes we need to invest in a new defensive midfielder or if he's happy with the current quartet.
The attacking part of the pitch as well is something that luckily has, especially we think about the Atletico game, clicked. I think had a really good performance. Probably, if you'd say in terms of attack-wise, I think the most impressive performance. I think especially having the 3 big summer signings, Havertz, Werner and Ziyech play in that front 3 and work well, especially for that first goal. I just wonder, again, Chelsea spent so much on that area last summer. This is a point I've made to several people. I wonder what it says about our investment if we have to go out and spend probably the same amount we spent on those 3 players for another player on top of that. And my point has always been, Haaland, of course, who's going to resist Erling Haaland? But there is a fight on for him. And if we can't get him, do you think if Haaland isn't a viable option this summer, if we can't get it done, do Chelsea still need a striker on top of that?
We need a striker, but I don't really think there are any other options we can compare to Erling Haaland. Sergio Aguero has been mentioned, and I love him, right? He's a fantastic striker. But it wouldn't make sense to bring him in. He's 32, 33. He's really struggled with injuries recently. Yes, he's an incredible player, but if we're bringing a striker in, it needs to be a striker for the future. The same way that, if we brought a Giroud-esque player in, yes, they'd be brilliant, but then they'd be gone in 1 or 2 years, and we'd have to start again. Honestly, I see it as Haaland or nothing, because if we get Haaland, brilliant. We've got the best striker in the world in current form, alongside Robert Lewandowski. We've got the ultimate player, and we can challenge for the title. If we can't get Haaland, I think that the board would just be looking to fill a hole, and there wouldn't be as good options. Lautaro Martinez has been mentioned. He would be an interesting signing, but he's not on the level of Erling Haaland. Sergio Aguero, top-class striker, but he's not going to be the same long-term impact as Erling Haaland. And on the other hand, we do have good strikers. Let's not deny Tammy Abraham, our top goal scorer for 2 straight seasons. Olivier Giroud, a World Cup winner. Timo Werner, when he eventually gets played up front, which is where I think he needs to be. We saw him get 40 goals last season at RB Leipzig. We know what he's capable of. So if we get Haaland in, it's fantastic for the club. We can really challenge on all fronts and maybe get another trophy, maybe even the Premier League. If we don't get Haaland, I don't think we should be looking at filling that hole, but rather looking at our strikers, maybe getting an attacking coach and focus on developing Werner and developing Abraham as out-and-out 9s. Because if we can't get Haaland, there's no point going to someone else.
This does come to my next question, which you did mention the title, and it's probably Tuchel's. I don't know if you've counted, but I wouldn't want to do a drinking game every time Tuchel says the word titles, because I think you'd be in a body bag pretty soon. But it has probably been his most used word, and we spoke about this earlier in the discussion with the expectation level. I think it's pretty clear Chelsea need to seriously compete for a Premier League title next season, with the pedigree of the coach, with the amount Roman's already invested, but as we speak about with Haaland, may invest even more in the summer. Is that realistic? Because this team, who've been showing some really good signs under Tuchel, there's no denying that. We've broken some big hoodoos recently in the Champions League, also going to Anfield and winning, could have a ridiculous end to the season still. But this club have not competed seriously for Premier League title since 2017. Is that realistic in comparison with, especially Man City at the moment under Pep? I mean, I want this team. I think this team can compete, but to expect him to win the league next season, do you think that's too much of a stretch?
It's something we don't necessarily need to expect, but something we can look forward to. This season was supposed to be a title charge, let's be honest. We'd got the top four, Lampard had got the players, we'd spent £200 million, we had an excellent squad. This was supposed to be the title charge season, and we had that up until December when we went top against Leeds, and then it went downhill. And, that's a whole nother debate on what went wrong, why didn't we continue, what fell apart of a club. But we have the foundations of that. We've got a great group of players. If you compare it to 2018, for example, which was probably one of the poorest title defending squads that we've had in recent times, that was good enough. Compare that to this squad, we have got world-class players. We've got great depth, real mix of experience and youth, which is exactly what we need. And of course, we will invest in the summer, but we don't need to go out and buy 5-6 players because we made our key investment last summer. We can challenge for the title. We should expect Tuchel to challenge for the title. But if he doesn't, I think the minimum for Tuchel next season will be top four, and the bare minimum. Because when he came in this season, I said, okay, if he gets top four, I'm happy. Considering where we were, considering what's happened this season, I will take that. If we look forward to next season, we are capable of challenging for a title. We've got all the foundations for that. Tuchel is the perfect manager to do that. We've got the perfect players, resources to back him. And yes, Manchester City are miles away. They're most likely going to get it now. But who's to say Chelsea can't compete with them? We're good enough to be in that situation. And that's why the summer's going to be really vital. Are we going to invest right? Are we going to get rid of Deadwood, which has always been a really big issue for me, where we have so many players like Thierry Bakayoko, Danny Drinkwater, still on our payroll, just being loaned out, so we don't have to pay for them. We need to clear out the Deadwood, get in the final pieces of a Tuchel puzzle, and really drive forward and challenge. Because if we look now in the form table, we're up there with Manchester City. I think we're second in the form table since Tuchel came in. So we're clearly good enough to challenge. The question is, can Tuchel do it? And I think he can, absolutely.
There is a vibe to me about Tuchel of like Antonio Conte, like 16-17 Antonio Conte. I mean, I'm not trying to just say this because he's playing for it at the back, but I just mean in terms of his demeanour. I think when fans get back into the stadium, I think his touchline demeanour, I think, is something that fans will get behind. I think the way he's conducted himself in the PR sense has been wonderful, and I think that will help him. There is going to be that pressure when fans, as much as it is a wonderful thing that we want fans back into the stadiums, that will bring its own pressure, won't it? Like in terms of the expectation level of fans, in certain ways of the way certain games I've seen recently from Chelsea that I think fans would maybe be demanding a lot more of the team, especially those 0-0 draws where it was sort of petering out in the last 20 minutes or so. I think there'd be more demand on the players, which clearly in tone, as you said earlier, help the players. Do you wonder if there are some players who've benefited off no fans, if that makes sense? They thrived off of, or maybe been able to feel a little bit more freer without those fans there, if you get what I'm saying?
It's a fascinating point to think about. What is it like for the players not playing the fans? Of course, they'll say the standard, yeah, we miss the fans, we want their back, we love their support. But like you said, there's also that pressure that's taken off. The groans we hear about at Stamford Bridge when someone kicks it over into the shed end upper, and you hear a massive groan around around the bridge. Of course, that's going to add pressure. So having that, not having that, is a real big advantage. On the other hand, the 0-0 point you make is exactly what I've been thinking. The Manchester United game, for example, it was the 80th minute, and I'm just watching, and I wish I could just be chanting and really, encouraging the team, but it's dead silent, and the players have nothing to motivate themselves, but themselves really driving each other on. So when the fans come back in, I think we'll see a balance between everyone being really happy to be back and back together, but also that added pressure. However, we're going into that added pressure in perfect form. If we were going in having lost every single game under Tuchel, it would be more negative, no doubt about it. People would be excited to be back, but it wouldn't have the same energy. But all the fan base are in a really good position. We're all happy, delighted with what's going on. And when we're eventually back in, we'll be happy, the players will be happy, the manager will be happy. So that will all combine. And not to mention, hopefully fans will be back in May. And then we'll go into August and you'll have the whole pre-season vibes. Hopefully COVID is over. We've got a new season in. So when it gets to that situation, I think it will be a positive impact. And seeing how Tuchel does react will be interesting. I think you'll have a good relationship with the fans because, he's got that energy and that passion of a touchline. And I'm going to touch on this in my piece this week. But Tuchel gives me the vibes of the passion of Antonio Conte, the pragmatism of Jose Mourinho, and kind of a professionalism of Frank Lampard. He is the perfect blend. And I can't wait for the fans to meet him up close, because believe me, when they get to see what Tuchel is like up close, they will see why he is the perfect manager for Chelsea.
It's a point I've heard made and brought up several times with people I've had conversations with and conversations I've listened to regarding Chelsea, is it does feel like Tuchel is sort of a nice hybrid of a few philosophies and a few, how difficult this role is at Chelsea to maintain, to deal with, to balance a lot of things at the same time. I do agree with you. I think Tuchel has a lot of those ingredients that may just form the perfect blend. I love the fact that he sort of said they're going to sack me anyway, so whatever, I'll just do what I do and hopefully I win a Premier League title. And that, I think that's something that fans can really get behind, and get behind Tuchel. And I think he's done a lot of good work in a very short space of time. It could be a very ridiculous end to the season, couldn't it? We're in the Champions League quarter-final. We've got an amazing draw against Porto. I mean, I don't want to underestimate Porto. It's still going to be a very difficult game. But depending on, if we contrast it with teams we could have got in this draw, it's a lot more favourable. And, of course, the FA Cup as well. This could turn into one of Chelsea's best seasons. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing. I'm currently writing a piece for the fanzine about this where it does feel very Chelsea, that it's been chaotic. There's been really low moments. There's been a change of manager. But it all could, it could replicate 2012 if you think about currently where we sit.
Absolutely. Look at 2012. We finished sixth in the league. We bottled the top four very, very late on, but we won the FA Cup. 2 weeks later, of course, we won the Champions League. And there are a lot of 2012 vibes. There's lots of talk about that. But focusing on what we're seeing this season, to be in March, late March, and still challenging on all three fronts is a huge achievement, especially in the top four. The last two seasons, while we've been comfortably in the top four, it's gone down to the final day, which is something we could have avoided, because you've looked at so many results across the season in both campaigns, and you say, if we'd won that, if we hadn't done this, we wouldn't have to be fighting on the final day. Hopefully that won't be the situation this season, and I do think we can confirm it before, and I hope so as well, because we're in a really good position where we can wrap up top four, maybe in match week 35 or 36, and then focus on, if we're still in the competitions, the FA Cup and Champions League. The FA Cup, of course, is the fourth season in 5 years we've been in this position, so it's always special, but it's not nothing new. The Champions League quarter-final, on the other hand, first time in 7 years, we've been starved of success in Europe, or in Champions League, I should say. And to be in this position, like you said, with a more favourable tie, I don't like saying an easy tie, and I've said this so many times, there's no easy tie with Champions League quarter-finals, especially against a Porto team who just beat the Serie A champions. But it is the most favourable tie. We have a huge chance, and then we could have a semi-final against, I believe it's Liverpool or Real Madrid. Real Madrid, we haven't played competitively since the 90s, I think is the last time I can remember. Liverpool, of course, is a funny one. We can beat them on our day, we can get smashed by them, but that's another challenge, that's another story. We can beat Porto, we're capable of that, and everyone will be confident of that. We're in a brilliant position, we're still unbeaten, we've got the team, we've got the atmosphere, we can challenge on all three fronts. So the perfect end to the season really would be get a comfortable top four finish. The title is looking difficult, not because of our performances, but because of how Manchester City have just been flawless since about November. That's out of our control. Top four finish, FA Cup win, Champions League win. That would be the ultimate season. And like you said, it could compete for being one of our best seasons, considering where we were from August till about early December, going through that rough patch, which again we saw in 2012, which is when Andre Villas-Boas got sacked, and then going on to such great success. It could be another fairy tale season, but we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We've got a very important run in ahead, huge games. Manchester City won't be easy. Porto won't be easy. We've got Arsenal. We've got, West Brom we can challenge, or Crystal Palace. Maybe not the toughest teams, but still games we have to focus on. So it will be a tough run in, but one that could end brilliantly for Chelsea.
I feel a little bit, I don't know if it is premature at this point, but player of the season is one of the final questions I want to ask you about player of the season, because it's tough at the moment. Just the conversation we just had in terms of what the season could entail in terms of the heights. If someone could make themselves a hero, that someone could come out of nowhere and do something remarkable. I sort of feel that it is Mason Mount at the moment who should be player of the season. You could argue, if you were to combine it with last season as well, he's sort of been Chelsea's best player for over 2 seasons. And here's another player under Tuchel that has done some wonderful things. The Liverpool winner, but just his consistency. Do you think it is Mason Mount? I think maybe Thiago Silva and Edouard Mendy are the two players that maybe come close to Mason's consistency this year.
Absolutely, Mason Mount. The thing with player of the season is you have to be consistent across the season. That is why Mateo Kovacic won it last season. There were shouts of Pulisic, which I didn't understand because he was only good after a restart. There were shouts of William, but as we know, his inconsistency is what costed him to have, incredible numbers. Mason Mount, on the other hand, has been consistent all across the season. And I also look at that purple patch, the Leicester game. I know it's hard to keep going back to that, but it's a real perfect example of what Chelsea was like during that period. No one tried, apart from Mason Mount, the only player to be trying in that period. And that says a lot, to be captain of a team as well at the age of 23. He's captain of twice now. He is definitely my player of the season. He's been a joy to watch. Any other competitors? I think it's only between Thiago Silva and Mason Mount right now. If Mateo Kovacic has a strong end to the season, maybe he's a competitor, but he wasn't great under Lampard from about November to January. So I don't think that justifies him. Pulisic and Ziyech, they've been all right recently, but not consistent enough. Azpilicueta as well, we saw him exposed as a right back. So a lot of these players who you can point out saying, yes, they've been good. Edouard Mendy as well. He has to be impressive, but there have been a few moments where I've been a bit worried, lack of communication, where he's rushed out and the opponents have scored, some poor distribution. And these are really, really minor critical points because, of course, he's been fantastic, but he's not at a level yet where he can be competing for player of the season. But he could be. But right now, it's Mason Mount or Thiago Silva, and I'm going for the former for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I think it is consistency levels and also versatility. I mean, you think about the number of positions. I think I answered a question about this on the video yesterday, where he's played at like right wing, he's played at number 8, he's played at now as a number 10, he's probably played as a false 9 at some point too. It's like he's played everywhere, and that level of consistency for such a young player is so impressive. But thank you, mate, so much for coming on the channel to have this discussion. As I do with all my guests, I want to give you the opportunity now to plug your work online. Obviously, you're working a press box, but I know you've got a newsletter that you just released, so please shout that out now.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. It's a great pleasure to be on and work with you. If you've enjoyed my work, you can find it on Nishal's blog and nishalsblog.com, where I release articles about football, politics, and exclusive interviews with more to be coming soon. You can also follow me on Twitter at Nishal_SP, where I publish all of my work. And you can follow my new newsletter, NSP newsletter, which is going to be released every Monday morning at 9 a.m. UK time, where you can find all of my work, whether it's podcasts like this, videos, or articles I've written. But thank you very much for having me on.
No worries, mate. All the links to Nishal's work will be in the description box below, as they always are, so please go and check it out and support his work. Really good stuff. Really great guy and great to have on the channel as well, and I'm sure a returning guest in the future as well, to hopefully to speak about Chelsea glory, maybe just in the Champions League. That's the dream. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. As ever, if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.